moved to his stand and with every strength in her lifted the portion of meat on his table. The meat slipped off her hand. It started moving, wiggling on the table. It started to make sounds. Voices were heard from the meat, crying and requesting for water. The villagers screamed and took to their heels. Once upon a time, in a small village, there lived a young man named Udoka. Udoka is a businessman who sells meat in the market. He was known for selling the cheapest and the largest portion of meat in the market. A portion of meat you will get for 5,000 naira elsewhere would sell for 1,500 in Udoka's stand. Every day, the women would crowd his table, eagerly waiting to buy from him. Despite the fact that he's always the last meat vendor to resume sales every day, the villagers would wait for him no matter how late he resumes, and before you know it, he is sold out. They would always leave his table with large portions of meat with so much smiles on their faces. His fellow meat vendors are only able to sell whenever he is done selling his own. They were not happy with him. What surprised them the most is the prices he sells his meat. They wonder why his is so cheap. They all buy meat from the same slaughter, so they couldn't understand why he sells at the prices he does. Udoka is a very jovial and friendly man. He never gets angry and he sells to the villagers with so much smile on his face. But behind that smile is a very dark secret that no one knew about. Udoka has this rule, which is no one comes close to his table or touches the meat before buying. Once you come to his stand, you tell him the quantity and price of meat you need, then he would cut it out for you. The villagers were never bothered about this rule. It didn't sound strange to them, as all they cared about was to buy their meat in large portions for a cheaper price. One day, a woman named Ihoma sent her daughter to the market to buy some foodstuff. The market where Udoka sells meat is not their usual market, but as Ezinne left to buy the foodstuff, her friend told her about Udoka and his large meat portions, so they decided to go and buy from him. Ezinne got back from the market, but as Ihoma brought out the meat to cook, it looked different from the usual meat she knows. She felt goosebumps all over her body. Each time she touched the meat, it slipped off her hand. She couldn't cut it into pieces. She somehow felt the meat was making some movement, but she didn't want to believe it. She called her daughter and asked where she bought the meat from, and Ezinne told her. She was worried about the meat, so she didn't cook with it but only parboiled it. The next morning, Ihoma woke up and went into her kitchen. To her greatest surprise, her pot cover was on the floor. The meat had swollen and filled the pot, such that the cover had to fall off to contain the meat. Ihoma screamed and ran out. She couldn't believe her eyes. Something is wrong. This meat is not the normal meat we eat. She didn't want to attract the villagers, so she dressed up and told Ezinne to take her to the meat vendor stand. As they got to the market, people were already gathered, waiting for Udoka to start his day sales. Udoka came and arranged his table, and as usual, he did so with so much smile and happiness as he greeted the villagers. Before he started selling, he reminded them of his instructions and pleaded with the villagers to adhere to it. Udoka started to sell, and Ihoma stood from afar and watched. Ihoma is a woman blessed with spiritual powers to see humans and spirits. She came close and felt some strange and negative energy around Udoka's table. She went home, and after consulting her gods, they told her that the only way of revealing Udoka's hidden secret is by going close to his table and touching the meat. The next day, Ihoma went back to the market, and as Udoka began to sell, Ihoma hurriedly moved to his stand and with every strength in her, lifted the portion of meat on his table. The meat slipped off her hand. It started moving, wiggling on the table. It started to make sounds. Voices were heard from the meat, crying and requesting for water. I need water! I need water! The meat cried. The villagers screamed and took to their heels, each person running like their life depends on it. This is something they never imagined or thought about. Udoka sells human flesh to them as cow meat. We all know meat sellers in the market are usually men. Some of them were brave enough and didn't run. With the commotion in the market, Udoka tried to escape, but Ihoma screamed and told them to catch him. Udoka was caught. The villagers held him and asked him where he got his meat from. The meat on his table was still wiggling and asking for water. Udoka cried and begged the villagers not to kill him, that he would take them to where he gets his meat from. The villagers followed him and went to his house. Udoka lives in a small hut. As they got to his hut, the villagers wondered where he slaughters his victims to sell their flesh. Udoka took them through to the back of his hut. It smelled of rotten meat and death. Behind Udoka's hut was a very big compound filled with shallow graves. Then a big pit where he throws the bones of his victims. There were dirty clothes scattered everywhere. The clothes belonged to his victims. The villagers were mesmerized. This is unbelievable. Udoka told them how he got his victims and how he sedated them before slaughtering to avoid screams and shouts. There also, the villagers found two ladies and a man tied up. Udoka told them that they will be killed tomorrow morning. He also told them about the young men from the next village that brings humans for him. As the villagers were still there, Udoka's men arrived with another victim. On seeing the crowd, they tried to escape, but the villagers caught up with them. The villagers shouted, Udoka, you are evil, and your evil have caught up with you. We will not let you harm anyone else. You must be punished for what you have done. They took Udoka and his companions to the village chiefs. The village chiefs were furious and ordered Udoka and his men be locked away. As the villagers celebrated their victory, Ihoma spoke up. We must give these souls a proper farewell. They deserve peace. The villagers agreed and decided to hold a ceremony for those who had suffered. That night, they gathered together, lighting candles and sharing stories of those who had been lost. They honored the voices from the meat that had cried out for help and for water, vowing to protect their village from evil forever. From that day on, the villagers were more careful about whom they trusted. They never forgot the lesson learned from the evil meat vendor, and they ensured that no one would ever fall victim to darkness again. Whenever they passed the market, they remembered the day when truth sang louder than any evil. The story of Udoka, the evil meat vendor, lingered, a cautionary tale whispered among the villagers for generations. Moral lesson: the story teaches the importance of trusting one's instincts. If something seems soft, it's important to investigate further. Ihoma's curiosity led to uncovering the truth. Consequences of evil actions: Udoka's misdeeds ultimately led to his downfall, reminding us that evil actions have consequences. And finally, be wary of deceit. Not everything that looks good is safe. It's crucial to look beyond appearances. Thank you so much for listening to my story. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to my channel, and to my subscribers, thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate. Do not forget to turn on the notification bell for more interesting stories from Amaka's Folk Tales. Bye bye.